All right. We're live. Welcome back, or welcome for the first time, if this just happens to be the first time that you've stumbled across this and you're like, what the hell am I watching here? This is the SitRep, the situation report, where I go through stories that have piqued my interest over the past 24 hours and talk about them from the perspective of prepping. How do we best prepare ourselves, make ourselves self-reliant human beings, prepare for the upcoming apocalypse, tongue-in-cheek, sort of. I mean, it could happen. It could definitely happen. But yeah, I'm Stuart, or Gads, and this is Ragnarok Survival, and this is what I do. I mean, I do other things as well, but thank you for joining me, at least. I'll just leave it there. All right, let's jump straight into it. I don't have a lot of time today because I'm actually teaching an online course in disaster preparedness, in how to stay alive in dangerous parts of the world. So, don't have a huge amount of time, but maybe half an hour or so. Try and keep it to about half an hour this morning. Let's jump into the big one this morning. By the way, I was stuffing around with microphones and stuff yesterday, so if microphone here, if YouTube can't hear me, you can't hear me. Watch it on Instagram instead. Okay, big story today. Just in, NATO to increase the number of rapid reaction forces on high readiness from 40,000, which is pretty high. It's a lot of forces. That's a lot of human beings who are on rapid readiness to jump into war. So it's from 40,000 to 300,000. So that's coming out of a media output, I think, that Stoltenberg put out. And he's come out and said, yeah, we're increasing to 300,000 for this ready reaction force, which is a pretty big jump. This is one of the bigger signals for me. When I got sent this story late last night by one of my sources, and then obviously this morning when I woke up, there was a few more follow-ups to it, and the actual reporting from him, from Stoltenberg himself. Yeah, this is like this. Instantly, I was like, whoa, this is a huge, I guess, red flag. This is a huge indicator that NATO is on the cusp of going to war here. You don't just, on a whim, almost increase your force size by almost 10 times of what it was. That's a huge deal. I can't stress that enough. I mean, this is not increasing forces or anything. These sort of forces are basically there. What they're doing is they're saying, hey, you guys are now on, like, I don't know what their notice to move is, but it might be you're now on 2 weeks notice to move, to be deployed to a war zone. You're now on 2 days. You're now on 24 hours. You're now on 30 minutes notice to move. So I don't know what the actual capability of their high readiness forces are, but generally speaking, most military forces or elements or armies or whatever have a ready reaction force of some kind. So, we've got that in Australia here of varying degrees, both within the full-time and then the reserve. So when I was in, this is going back a few years ago, they implemented a system into the reserves. So the reserves, they're just that, the reserves. They're basically civilians who train every now and then to kind of be ready. And if you wanted to send them to war, then they'd have to do a bunch more training to build up, and then they go. But they said to some people in the reserve, said, hey, if you want to, you can sign up to this. And it just means that you're on a much shorter notice to move. So that when we need to call someone up, it's you who's going to go first. So that's essentially what they're doing here. They're increasing the numbers from 40,000 troops that could potentially be called up to 300,000. That's huge. I mean, this is like peak Cold War era Europe forces build up here. Huge red flag this morning. Just to be laid out there. You're like, whoa, okay, is war happening? I didn't go through my stories this morning, so they're all over the shop. So I'll just try and remember where other stories are, because there's other things related to this. Primarily, where is it? Russia has reportedly defaulted on its external sovereign bonds for the first time in 100 years. So this has been building up for a long time, this default sort of thing, where the sanctions came out and they said, hey, you can't you can't pay all your bills. And every country has bills because that's how our system works on debt. So you have to pay the bills. You have to pay the interest on your debt. That's essentially how everyone's locked in. So it's quite amusing, actually. We all, like, people I think generally have this idea that the average Joe is in debt and we're always slaving away to make money for this bigger corporation or the government or something like that. Governments have locked themselves into the same thing. They're all in debt and they're all paying interest too, and they're paying it to the Reserve Bank, the I don't know, Reserve Illuminati or something. There's some supercomputer somewhere that's just looking at ones and zeros that's collecting all this money in interest on all this debt that's going out there. So anyway, countries can default just like human beings can, and it's a pretty big deal. And what the West has been doing is sanctioning Russia into a corner till they can't pay it. And they're like, we got you. And then Russia's like, niet, comrade, here is your money. And they're like, damn, all right, we'll put more sanctions on. And we got you now. And they're like, here it is. And so now they've closed almost all the gaps, and they're like, we've definitely got you now. And Russia's like, well, you do, but like, we've got the money, you just won't let us pay. So we actually technically, they're saying we're not defaulting. We are not defaulting, you're defaulting us. There's a difference there. So Commie Killer, how you going, man? I'm going to build a bunker when I get some land. Not a bad idea. Bunkers are always useful. So why am I reporting on this? Who cares? Russia defaults, right? Well, this is another key point. You can't just look at this sort of stuff, especially conflict, world conflict or large-scale conflict, in a vacuum. It's not just Russia charging over a border and stealing Ukraine's land. As much as the Western media would love us to believe that, that's not true. It is such a multifaceted issue that we're looking at. And one of those things is economic standing. So when you force a country into economic hardship, as the West is doing, you leave them no choice. So the reason I'm talking about this is because if Russia does default, it's going to have other implications on their economy, which, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, it will exacerbate their warlike activities. They will be much more likely to become more aggressive in a warlike manner or in a military-like manner. So this on top of the stuff that I was talking about yesterday, where they're starting to put Iskander, or Iskander, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it, missiles into Belarus, which then Putin came out afterwards and just dropped by the way, these could be nuclear capable as well. And, like, everyone in the Pentagon in the US at the moment is running around in a tizzy. Although I'm sure that we're getting reports from the Pentagon saying like, oh, Russia, look, they said they could use nukes. This is a big deal. This, again, is them prepping everybody for the inevitable, which is that the US is going to push into military action. That's my take on it, at least. So from the macro view, this is just my view on it. Again, I'm kind of looking at this. I'm going, US is forcing Russia. They're giving them no other options, no outs, apart from obviously get back in your box and go back into Russia and die a slow and painful economic death. Russia's obviously not going to do that. It's existential. That's why they did it. It's existential. They know their population is in decline. They cannot sustain their population. They have no other choice. If they don't want to do something now, then they won't have the choice to do it later. So that's why they're doing this. It's one of the reasons why they're pushing into this. On the other side of this, I think US is pushing way too hard. So I think there's something existential that's going on with the US, and it could be something that the US is seeing the writing on the wall with their dollar, that they're losing their grip on the control of the world. And so if they don't win this particular battle, everyone knows it's over. So that's where we sit today. NATO is ramping up. G7 is promising more and more money to be thrown in here, as well as some other like Belt and Road type money that they're throwing around to combat China. They're talking a lot about China too, and the South Pacific. Take the Ride on YouTube says Joe Budden. Is that a joke? Joe Budden or Joe Biden? Joe Budden keeps mentioning that another pandemic is coming. He says the next pandemic. He's starting to sound like a broken record. Well, laying the groundwork for it. For the next one that's coming, next farcical lockdown, as if they haven't destroyed our economy enough, they need to now put the boot on the throat, as it were. Let's talk about Indo-Pacific. US Indo-Pacific chief sees largest military buildup in Chinese army's history. So the US Indo-Pacific chief, who is, I don't have his, I assume it's a him, name down here, has basically come out and said, oh, this is the largest buildup we've seen of the Chinese army ever. Like, it's huge. So this is massive. We need to be, concerned about this. We need to be thinking about this. Blah 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 blah. Why is he saying that now? That's my question. Like, well, duh, we know this, and they've been doing it for years. So why are you coming out now and throwing this again on top of the fire? And it's bloody obvious why they're doing it. They're gearing us all up to make moves now into this Indo-Pacific area. So that's going to happen. There was one more story somewhere in this area. I can't find it. Anyway, we'll stick roughly in this area now, and we'll talk about the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, aka North Korea. Accuses US of Asian NATO and pledges stronger defense. So I've been talking about these alliances that have been built up around this area of the world, this South Pacific area that's happening at the moment. The latest one being the Friends of the Blue Pacific or some shitty name like that. They've really got to think of a better name. But obviously, we're very worried about Chinese power at the moment. So all these other nations are starting to build alliances here. North Korea has looked at that and said, this is absolute. Well, here's what they said. This proves the hypocrisy of the US rhetoric of diplomatic engagement and dialogue without preconditions, while at the same time revealing again that there is no change in the US ambition to overthrow our system by force. So all this sort of stuff's got the North Koreans' heckles up. They've been gearing up to do another nuclear test, and I'm assuming they're going to do it soon as a show of power, of might, of what they can do, that they can swing their dick back into the US face right now. So, watch that space. But again, none of this is pointing to anywhere good right now. This is all increasing tensions within these areas. Joe on YouTube says, I'm so scared of the Chinese. They are so brutal, and they have the skill and will to take over large swathes of the world if they want to. I saw a video of Chinese people skinning animals alive, just ripping their fur right off the hides after pulling them out of boiling vats to soften their hides. Absolutely brutal. Well, that does sound brutal. I haven't seen that, so I'm not sure what that one's about. But yeah, the thing that concerns me probably most about the Chinese system is that it is a totalitarian, authoritarian, communist system that they work under, and it crushes any sort of individuality. And so that's the thing that primarily scares the crap out of me with it. Then they've got not only the ability through human bodies to actually affect a huge amount of will upon the world, but they are extremely brutal, and they've proven that not over the past couple of years, but over decades and decades now, that they are willing to kill people en masse, that they are willing to force their will through any means possible. So I'm not just talking, sorry, my dogs are going off in the background. I'm not just talking about their latest lockdowns and things like that. Those latest lockdowns are like a drop in the bucket. That's almost nothing You want to go and see what happened during not their revolution, but the Great Leap Forward. Go look up the Great Leap Forward, i.e., the most amount of human beings ever killed in one go from one sort of event. So the second largest probably being the formation of the USSR and them pushing through their Great Starvation, their hard times. And then under that, then you're probably looking at the Holocaust. So for genocidal events, those two probably rank the top, as far as I know, for human death, being the Chinese and the Russian. And they're not talked about much because they were perpetrated on their own people. Still horrible stuff. Anyway, Joe says now, that's right, but that's also why it's not as successful as ours. Successful nations tend to be the most autonomous. It's why they can manufacture more but invent less. And that certainly seems to be what's bearing out, that especially with their IP theft, alleged IP theft, but they get IP theft, so they steal ideas, but then once they've got those ideas, they don't generally innovate them a lot. There's not a huge amount of innovation, or not the amount of innovation that we thought we would suspect to see from a nation of 1.5 billion people and an economy which is about to take over to be the world's largest economy. You should be having amazing innovation. We should be, I don't know, seeing their soldiers like blip in and out of battlefields with transporters or some crazy stuff with railguns. In defense of Chinese, most societal advancement has been brutal. American genocided all the natives and murdered blacks for centuries. Progress comes at a cost. I would agree with that to a certain extent, but we're looking at sort of apples and oranges there. For one's expansionism, one's colonialism to a certain extent, and one is, ideological movement or growth within a nation. So, but anyway, I'm not. That's a very fascinating discussion. Even Australians, like the same thing happened here in Australia. We say the advancement of society. That's a semantical argument that I'm just going to leave there, Joe, for now. I'm not sure if that would be I wouldn't class it as advancement of society. I would say expansion of a society, being the English society. But this is what we are growing up out of now. So it depends where we want to head to. What are we looking at heading to? For me, I look at it and I go, okay, what is going to cause innovation? What's going to create the things that we're going to need to move into a better future? A free and open society, in my view, a free and open market, in my view, competition, fair and open competition. Well, fair and open competition when the environment is set for it to run in the way that it should run. That's what I believe. Anyway, I'm getting off the point. I guess it is the point for me to get on here and rant a little bit, isn't it? All right, let's talk quickly about cyber attacks that have been happening. I'm always interested in cyber attacks. This is one thing that me, I'll just say me, I don't know how vigilant you are, but generally people in the Western world, or generally people everywhere, in fact, are pretty lax, are pretty lazy when it comes to cybersecurity, to cyber hygiene, to how we act on the interwebs, and we're pretty open to it. And then, as an extension, not just the individuals, but our systems are actually shockingly vulnerable to this sort of stuff. So here's another couple of examples. Cyber attack shuts Iranian steel plants. So they had some steel plants shut down yesterday. And where's the other one that I was looking at? Lithuania. So this one is Russian allegedly. Lithuania is hit by cyber attacks after an ultimatum from Russian killnet hackers. Lithuania being dragged into this whole, that entire area there, the Balkans, is obviously a pretty big target for Russia. But Lithuania in particular, who's come out and shut down the lifeline to Kaliningrad, was obviously opening them up to a bit of an attack there. So this is maybe the first part we're going to see. There's been a bit of a what would you call it, a pattern, I guess, within Russia of how they do things, where they launch cyber attacks. Little green men quite often go into the countries and start causing havoc in there. I don't think they'll probably do that script if they were going to do it in Lithuania. I think it'd probably be just more overt and attack now that Ukraine's there and the cat's sort of out of the bag. I think they'd probably be a bit more aggressive in this space. But again, I'm not saying that this is the starting of Russia moving in on Lithuania. It's just another little thing that I look at and go, that could happen. That's definitely a sign to look out for. Let's jump over to Australia now. The US Embassy, I got sent this through from a source. US Embassy and consulates in Australia, they just got sent out, or they just posted a demonstrations alert. So a demonstration alert for US missions within Australia as of yesterday. Location: Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Canberra, Perth, Wollongong. All of those being capital cities apart from Wollongong. Demonstrations are scheduled from Monday 27th through to Saturday, July 2nd, 2022 at the following locations, and it lists out the locations and when their demonstrations have been marked out to do. So this is obviously following on for the Roe versus, well, I'm assuming it's pretty obvious to me, it's following on for the Roe versus Wade hearing or dropping of that thing in the US, and so now they've put it out to Australia. They've put it out to a whole heap of countries, but it's important to me because I'm Australian. So if you are in and around, or you're going to be in and around US embassies, which I may well be in the next little bit of time, this is something that you should keep your mind on. As I said, demonstrations, riots, civil unrest, this is something that we're going to see more and more of as we move on now. Increased violence within our own societies. So arm yourself, protect yourself, and start to do the right things. The best thing we can do about riots and stuff like that is to avoid them. So if you can avoid it, avoid it. It's so cold that I can't even move my fingers, says Comicula. Yep, it's -3 here. -3 degrees centigrade or Celsius. Joe on YouTube: in Russia's defense, they did warn them to stop messing with them. They could have let the trains through. Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Couldn't agree with you there. I'm like, when Lithuania said they're going to shut that down, I'm like, okay, all right. I'm not sure why you've decided to go down that, but good luck to you for that. Russia has actually been pretty nice through this process. Think Stalin would have been this patient. What would he have done if he had access to the nukes? Probably not good things. Probably not good things. Okay, yeah, so demonstration alert for Australia. Keep yourself safe if you're in or around those areas. Whole bunch of stories. So I'm actually not going to talk about them all. I'm just going to skip through and try and find some good ones. One of the top central bankers on the globe has just warned that the world is at the tipping point of permanently high prices. And I saw this one and I'm like, yep, this is something that I believe very deeply. Everything can go back to the way it was, but we're starting to get to a point where we can actually break the systems that we have, and they may not come back for a very long time. They may not come back. Okay, the systems that we have had in place and the cheap energy that we've had has made it so that we have been able to afford like all this crap for far less than it's actually worth for a very, very long time. Now we are absolutely sitting at a point where all this could change, and where the value of all the stuff that we have access to will rapidly change as well. We won't have access to moving things around easily and quickly around the world. We won't have access to the economies of scale because of that lack of movement. We won't have access to the types of manufacturing that we've had. So things then will regress back to I guess, a more hands-on or a more human energized or human energy-focused system, which will cost more. And it's going to stay that way. Larman's Grove, worth checking out podcasts of the Lotus Eaters' most recent cast. They go through R versus W, that's Russia versus West, or I guess, or Roe versus Wade, quite well from an English perspective. Cool. Joe, absolutely cannot go back to how it was. Impossible. That doesn't mean it has to get absolutely horrible, but there's no going back. Impossible. Too much money has been put into the system chasing too few goods. Yeah. So that's what this one of the top central bankers come out and said. It's we're kind of at that tipping point now that things, prices are increasing. I just walked past my local petrol station this morning. Guess what? Diesel's gone up again. Doesn't matter because looks like my car's blown a head gasket, so I'm not driving anywhere anytime soon. But the fuel now is at $2.45. So $2.45 a litre for diesel. And again, I'm pretty sure this is still without the government tariffs on top. If the government decides to put those tariffs on top, man, this stuff's going through the roof. All right, I'm going to wrap it up in about 5 minutes. Just a couple of little stories that I want to throw in here. In the US, 40,000 National Guard troops to face unemployment as vaccine deadline is becoming imminent. I'm just, why? Don't worry, US. I'm sure you won't need any to call up your National Guard anytime soon. Sure you won't need any extra forces or anything like that. National Guard is the reserves, essentially, for Aussies who are looking at and go, what does National Guard do? US also has a slightly different system. US isn't supposed to be constitutionally isn't supposed to be allowed to deploy their own troops on their own land, on their own nation. So regular full-time people, no, can't do it. You can deploy them overseas, but not onto their own land. So that's when you call in the National Guard to do that. Whereas Australia doesn't have any such thing. Amtrak passenger train in Missouri has derailed overnight. 243 people on board. It was heading towards Chicago. Injuries reported. There has been some reports of possible fatalities, but I haven't had anything confirmed yet. Seen a lot of video of it. It's pretty, full on. Allegedly, it hit a dump truck, and they derailed. Or EU comes out and says Africa should stop buying Russian fertilizer. There you go. Problem solved. Problem is they can't make any of it themselves. So that's, to me, the EU coming out and saying, hey, look, we're a bit cold over here, or a bit hot at the moment, actually. We can't turn our air conditionings on. So we're doing our part. Now you guys do your part and don't buy any Russian fertilizer, and just starve to death. Already, I've said this a bunch of times, already we are going to see thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, probably before the year is out, of starving African people. And that's going to go up into the area of millions next year if this food system keeps going the way it's going. And that's just based on food alone. If we then say, hey, you can't get any fertilizer out of Russia as well, oh, now you can't grow your own food as well. it's going to be painful, very, very painful for those guys over there. Okay, that's it. Yeah, I'm not going to touch on the rest of these stories. There's no, I'll just finish with this one because I found it was interesting. A study reveals that 75% of US teens aren't getting enough daily exercise. I think it was called the Walder report. Like this is blatantly obvious. This is, to me, this is always something. And yes, I am a sports and exercise scientist, or a qualified sports and exercise scientist. It's not something I like practice doing or anything. But I am about fitness and human conditioning and things like this. And it's something for years and years and years now that I've looked at and I've gone, like, if you have fat children, this is almost tantamount to child abuse. Like, this is the next generation that we're setting up for failure already. Okay, if you're a fat adult, like, that's on you. I still don't like that, but you can do something about that. But if it's a child, like, that has been influenced by that adult, by that parent. So it's up to parents, get out there and run, little Timmy. This is the sort of thing that is pointing to a very bad future. So again, when we're prepping, we're thinking about prepping. Quite often we can think about this like, oh, the next couple of days or this event happening, this mysterious zombie apocalypse, and how we're going to survive that. And yeah, okay, plan for that sort of stuff and plan for all that sort of thing. But also plan for the future. Plan for 10 years, plan for 20 years, plan for 80 years. Not that you're probably going to live for another 80 years, but your kids probably will, or their kids will. So this is the sort of long-term, this sort of stuff. When I see it, I like to point it out and go, hey, prepping isn't just about the here and now. It's also about future generations, and we really need to think about that. And again, tying this in with this, my whole take is like, hey, we got to start thinking about our health. Okay, our own physical capability is super, super important. We've got to look after ourselves. We've got to look after our kids. And this is an easy way to do it. Get them outside, get them moving. Way too much screen time. And I'm not saying get rid of the screen time. It's just, I played video games playing up. Also got on my bike and rode around a lot. Also went out into the wilderness and ran around with my brother and did crazy survival, weird Rambo stuff. Have balance within your life. Don't stare at screens all day. Oddly enough, that's what I'm going to do all day. So I've got to jump off now because I've got to go get ready for staring at the screen all day and teaching people how to survive. So thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the comments. Everyone who chucked in comments. And thanks, Joe, writing me a little novel here. I like it. But keep up the good work, everyone. Keep prepping. Keep yourselves safe out there. There's a few stories I didn't really extrapolate them on there, but I threw those stories out of like, hey, remember to keep yourself safe. Remember things like, hey, why did I put up train derailment? What if that was you? What if you traveled by train? What do you have on you to keep yourself safe? Do you carry a little first aid kit in your EDC, in your grab bag? So start to think about these things. So stay safe out there. Keep your eyes open. Keep prepping. Semper Paratus.